Hello and welcome. I'm Raziel, and I'm here again with Macca from the Outer Circle. He's a damn good guy. Go check his channel out. I think he's one of the straightest shooters on the platform for Warhammer and Games Workshop. That you specialize in Horus Heresy. You did a video recently about reviews, and they're not as critical as they should be. What goads you? What in particular goads you in this sort of position?
So in this case, it was sort of the straw that broke the camel's back. I don't think a person should be creating a review unless the review actually has content which is helpful. You know, the reviews are there to provide information to inform the customer so that they can make appropriate purchasing decisions. Everything is going to have a problem, okay? It's just the scope of the problem and whether or not you can live with it. And that information needs to be put out there because, well, a person needs to understand whether or not the product is for them. And we see this all throughout life. You know, everything has trade-offs. It might be, automotive, mechanical reliability. If you have a car with a very high mechanical reliability, but it's got an awful interior, yes, that interior may be awful, but hey, if the car never breaks down, most people would just be content with that. So, yes, there is a criticism to be had there. But the trade-off, you know, people are happy to bear it. And it doesn't mean you need to stray away from talking about it. But for some reason, when it comes to this particular hobby, people are afraid to give, you know, very, very mild critique is about the worst people will do. And it's, you know, I know this personally, you get jumped on for negativity.
Oh, yeah, I know. Like, I was talking about, I think it was the previews, not last week, but the week before, but they were just so atrocious. And I said that. And I'm a small channel, but the amount of comments I got for that alone was more than anything else I would ever get. And what a lot of people don't realize, and this is talking from experience, that a review actually has two jobs, and people don't realize it. The second job isn't for the customer, it's for the publisher, the producer, you know, the guy who made the product, because you're literally giving them direct feedback when it's in the public hands so they can work on it or improve for next time, you know?
Yeah, and I've found that, you know, many different people that I've worked with and done reviews on their stuff over the years, they take the criticism on board. I'm doing a review at the moment in the background, printing some terrain for an upcoming Kickstarter for war scenery. And, you know, most is pretty good terrain, but I turned around and said, look, these particular walls, you've got locating pins for the different floors in this building to line up. The pins aren't the right spot. One of these wall segments, the pin is 3 millimeters away from where it needs to be. Like you have to cut it off if you want to join it to the wall. Also, these overhangs are too extreme for this printing technology, and they didn't go, well, you know, that's just what we intended. People have to learn to live with it. No, they said, okay, we're gonna fix that. That's what a customer expects from a company.
Sorry, after you.
No, I was just going to say, we don't see that with a certain company.
And the thing is, it also produces, you know, a better customer satisfaction base, because if a reviewer says, like, if you take, like, my big grudge of the last edition was the World Eater Codex, and I wish I did review it now because I would have given it a scathing review. The first things first, it was a £30 codex, and it was no bigger than the Space Wolf supplement. And that sort of, for all the reviews I read, no one mentioned that. And to me, that would be a massive selling point. It's like, why would you sell a book for 30 quid, which is no bigger than a book that was 17 quid? Let alone, this is what bugged me. And because I do Chaos Space Marines for 40k, I do Iron Warriors. And what bugged me is that if I was to use Khorne Berserkers in my Iron Warriors, I would have had to, last edition, and probably this edition, I'm going to have to buy 2 codices. You know?
Yeah. And also, you know, people won't talk about the duration of time that passes between a codex releasing and the end of an edition. So if you play, you know, Khorne Berserkers last edition of 40k, or you played the Imperial Guard, the Astra Militarum, by the time you've built and painted those forces, you might not even play them that edition. the average hobbyist. There's a lot of people, they got priorities in life. They got kids and families and work and all these sort of things get in the way, and they don't manage to get their miniatures finished in less than say 3-4 months for an army. That's a pretty good timeline.
I mean,
but yeah.
I was going to say, I work from home, so I can paint and build while I work. And for me to build an army, even a combat patrol box, is going to take me a month. And like I have what would be considered a lot of free time because I'm at home, I'm working. But if I was to do worldies, that would have just annoyed me so much. But even with my relaxed time, I would still not have been able to do it properly for a game in 9th edition. But the thing is, and I was looking at reviews and stuff like that, and it's always like how great it is. And I think GW also knows that you need the codex to play the game.
Yeah. It's so okay. So with the reviewers, there's a few key traits I've sort of noticed, and I find it very interesting to talk to people because I don't always go around advertising myself as the Outer Circle when I go and talk to people. I just call myself me. I have normal profiles, and I'll ask many of these reviewers like why they hold a certain opinion on something because it's just informative to see how people think. And for example, one of the people I asked was Pardo from SM Battle Reports.
Oh yeah.
Okay, I got nothing against the guy, by the way. Because he goes, one of the people in the comment section said, "No, I'm cancelling my order for the book." And he goes, "Don't do that. It's an amazing book." So I said, "Why is it amazing?" So I wanted to know, why is it amazing? And he did reply. And you know what he said? He said, "Oh, it's a big book, big campaign, much larger than the last one." Okay, so it's volume. Didn't talk about the quality of the rules writing. He just said, "Oh, it's got a lot of volume." So it's like, does that mean let's contrast this now with another medium, movies? If I went to a movie and the movie is 3 hours long or 4 hours long, does that mean it's a good movie? Not necessarily, right?
No.
If you're like myself and you're 15 years old, you've had a night of binge drinking with your buddies because and you're trying to hide the hangover from your parents. So you go to the movies and you end up watching Alexander.
Mm-hmm.
And you're expecting this war epic like Gladiator, and instead it's, a lot of gay eroticism and things like that, and Colin Farrell doing the worst accent in the world.
Yeah.
You're not going to sit there and go, "Man, I'm glad this was a really, really long movie."
Oh, exactly. See, one thing I try to do, and that's something I always thought is a good thing, is like reductivism. Like, if I can get to a point within 10 minutes, I'm going to get to the point in 10 minutes. And just because, like you said, just because something's long doesn't mean it's good. If you take the Space Marine Codex from the Chaos Space Marine Codex from 3rd edition, compare it to the 4th edition, it's black and white how good and bad it is. And if you're going to say like the 4th edition one's better because it's bigger, it takes so much away of what made the 3rd edition so good.
Or what did they say in Hamlet? Brevity is the soul of wit.
Exactly.
But it's not to say that means that a book is bad either. It can be good, it can be bad. Page count is a factor. So that makes it into a review. Okay, fine. So then you go, okay, what else makes it into the review? Well, obviously the rules do. And so this is where my ire was drawn, because I sat there and, I've been playing games with friends who played Helldivers too. And we'd gone through the Goonhammer article as a group, read through all of the rules, sort of digested it, saw a couple of leaked images from the book as well. I digested those, read the 54 traits of the Legionnaires, the Astartes, Shattered Legions. And I agreed with Goonhammer. I came to the conclusion that this is just pretty much borderline unplayable, the Shattered Legions. So it makes the Legionaries Hereticus Emperor's Children look kind of good in comparison. And then I come in to read this Sprues and Brews article where he reviews it. And let me see if I can pull up this article. Sorry, one of my other windows.
That's right, because I've got, because according, like, I was looking forward to Better Garmin because I want to collect the Horus Heresy books, and I've got to be honest, dude, it's your fault I'm into Horus Heresy. It's all your fault.
Yeah, my bad.
and I was looking forward to Better Garmin, and then I read the Shadrach Medusan rule, raising the storm. I'm going to read it out because this is just one of the worst rules I've ever read in my 30 years of playing 40k. Once per battle, this is going to be a hard. Once per battle, at the start of any turn where Shadrach Medusan's controlling player is the active player, this special rule may be activated. For the duration of the turn on which this special rule is activated, all models in the same detachment as Shadrach Medusan with Legion of Astartes Iron Hands or Legion of Astartes Shattered Legions, special rule gain Furious Charge. 1. And Hatred, Traitors, special rules. In addition, an army whose warlord has this trait may make an additional reaction during the movement phase as long as the warlord has not been removed from casualty. To me, that is just a big word salad, which could have just been so easily condensed into a couple of sentences and not repeat itself twice.
Yeah, once per game, gain Hatred, Traitors, and Furious Charge.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's same as when we had the Atheon Sentinel rules and the Atheon Sentinel rules PDF that dropped, and it says equipment. It says the equipment is the Atheon Sentinel. It's armed with itself. And then you go down and you read. There's actually this big text box which basically tells you it has a multi-laser. You go, well, just right, multi-laser. Yeah, but this is the thing, right? You go, these are minor things. They're nothing to write home about. They're not making me curse my existence on this rock. But people just won't talk about it. So come on, it's an obvious issue. One of the ones that will make you laugh is when a unit is down to a single legion type in the Shattered Legions, it basically takes on the worst version of its rules possible. So with the Night Lords, their dreadnoughts have to take on the rule that if they're Night Lords, that they can't charge a unit unless they outnumber it. They become cowards. So you end up having situations where models such as dreadnoughts count as they're one model, right? Because it's not based on like bulky or anything like that. So a dreadnought now can't charge anything it doesn't outnumber. Well, if it's one model, what's it going to outnumber?
Exactly. It's like
so no dreadnoughts can charge if they're Night Lords in a Shadow Legion force.
It was like which one of the aircraft, which is like a turducken. You just put inside because of the way they just worded it so badly. I'm trying to think which one it was. I think it's the is it the Thunderhawk? Where you can put like another bigger vehicle inside of it, just because of how the rules were written, that it could have a vehicle inside.
Yes, the Stormbird and the auxiliary vehicle back.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Storm Durkin.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a personal favorite. It still hasn't been FAQ, by the way.
I know.
They're so fixated at Games Workshop. It's the height of hubris, right? If you have, say, a video game and the video game releases and it is just in a really bad state, right? Which happens a lot in the current video game industry. Like, let's say it's buggy, it's crashing all the time, microtransaction hell. If it gets savaged in reviews, these companies do actually change direction somewhat. We see them, we saw it with like Star Wars Battlefront 2. You go all the way back then to like 2017.
Oh, yeah.
They got savaged so badly over their microtransactions that laws started to get put in place about microtransactions. And also they dropped the threshold for their monetization systems down significantly. They went to full-on defensive mode. This is a good thing. We see it with games like Diablo 4 and that. They're like, all right, we've messed up. We're going to try and take a new approach. I'm not saying that their success, their fixes are necessarily the fixes that need to happen, but they do change direction. Games Workshop, though, gets the mildest of critique, and then basically behind closed doors says, we don't care what critique we get. We're just sticking with our vision. Just, wow, what hubris, I just think to myself.
And I think one of the other problems with Games Workshop is that, do you ever watch Bill Burr, the comedian?
Yes.
Did you ever see his bit on Elvis Presley?
I don't think I have.
It's really interesting, and I think we can actually sort of attach it to Games Workshop. Elvis Presley was the first to die of a drug overdose. He was like the first to be like hedonistic and stuff like that. Like he was living a rock star life before the rock star life existed. So he was sort of like showing people how bad it could get before it, we see the tropes nowadays. And with Games Workshop, it looks like it's kind of the same thing, where we're seeing how bad they can get, and other companies now coming behind saying, okay, customers don't like this, so we'll stop doing that. So they're taking like the complaints to Games Workshop and sort of bringing it onto themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And like if you play Mantic, don't you? Like Kings of War.
No, I don't actually.
Well, if you ever get a chance, because the rules are free to download anyway, go to they're very old school Warhammer rules. They are. And you can see that they got a lot of inspiration from the complaints about Age of Sigmar on how they did their game. Yeah, they marketed it so much so, sort of like, this is the old Warhammer. And I've seen other companies do the same, where they've seen the complaints of Games Workshop, such as pricing. And one of my favorites, as I've said before, is War Cradle. And basically, one of their big marketing for their big game, Wild West Exodus, is you just need this one box and you've got the game sorted.
Nothing wrong with that. I don't have a problem with people having positivity in reviews. I think that's fine. Reviews don't have to be overly negative. You don't need to be like, this is the worst thing ever. Unless like it's a bit of a character thing for your channel to do so. Or your blog or whatever it might be where you perform your reviews. But the problem is that, you need to give an overview of everything and let people treat the review like a buffet. Pick and choose from it what you will, but just here is all of the food. And so with a book like this, what should be happening in these reviews is people say, well, all right, Black Shields are workable. Rules are a bit quirky. They work like a Shattered Legion. The militia provenances. So it's like pick two. These are your special rules for your Black Shields this edition. All right, cool. Here's the characters. Here's Aximand. Not very good. Here is Tybalt Ma. Pretty decent. Here is Shadow Medicine. Rules make no sense for what is his role on the tabletop. All right. Here is Hibao Khan, the dude who beat the snot out of Aximand, who is guaranteed to lose to him every time on the tabletop because of bad rules writing, right? And the extent to which you draw that out might vary from person to person, but you need to give them that information in the first place. Then you go, all right, it's got a 200 odd pages, copious campaign system, with additional detail added. Where now, talking of bad special rules, are you familiar with the Allies detachment rules for 30K and the FAQ that they put out about it?
See, one thing I've always liked about your channel is that you do something that I agree with wholeheartedly. So you'll find, like, you'll criticize something, but you always say, like, this is how I do it. And, you would find a way. See, the way I find, like, you get negative and positive reviews is that when you do a negative review, you should always say how you would fix it or what ways it could be better, rather than just saying, oh, look, this is bad, I don't like it.
Yeah, I'll offer the solution to the problem where I can, and then I'll get shouted down for my negativity anyway. So I'm not sure why I do it to myself. But with the Allied Matrix rules, you can take as many Allied detachments as you want in Heresy 2.0. That's just something they put randomly into the last set of FAQs. and left everyone scratching their heads going, hang on, so I can take infinite ally detachments and can they be the same legion? And the company went, yes. So I could take, here's my Imperial Fists allied with Dark Angels, allied with Dark Angels, allied with Dark Angels. Like, it makes no sense, but that's what they wrote in the FAQ, and they haven't changed it. And then they brought out this book, and one of the things in this book is it says, well, if you if you're playing the Onslaught campaign, which continues on from the Cathonia campaign, then you get to take an extra ally detachment. You go, but hang on, you wrote an FAQ 5 months ago that said you can take as infinite ally detachments. What's going on here? So that should make it into the review, or if it's picked up anyway. But people are afraid to put this stuff in the review. Now, as I said, the amount of depth you want to go into, how mean you want to be to the company, will you go YouTube reviewer like an Angry Joe show? You done effed it up, or do you go down the very, very mild route? Do you go like a Chris Stuckman level, where he's like, I make movies myself. Movie making is hard, so like I don't want to critique movies anymore. I just want to talk about what's good in movies. Well, if you can do that, that's fine. But you're now no longer reviewing them, are you?
Oh, exactly.
So,
I mean,
yeah.
Have you seen the new Hybrid Khan model?
Yeah.
What do you think of it?
So I haven't really spoken too much about it because another person asked me to come on their channel and on their channel to do my chat. But in short, that's not about Khan. I'm not saying it's a bad model. I would happily run it as a White Scars model in a White Scars army. Looks good. But that is not about Khan. If you look at the artwork, apart from the way they've sort of painted his face, which isn't right, they've painted a skull onto his face, but he's actually meant to be more like a kabuki painting scheme, like kabuki theater paint.
Oh, yeah.
But you look at his art and you look at the model he got, and they are, apart from the fact that technically they're both in power armor and they both use swords, that's it. That's the resemblance.
See, I think one of the things that I try my best not to sort of blend the two. I keep the tabletop away from the lore. I know I shouldn't, and I know a lot of people don't think that way. It's just the way that I do things because I find them to be very different. Because they got some silly. Have you what was it they said about the Primarchs? If a Primarch dies in battle, they didn't really die on the tabletop. They were whisked away. I'm like, well, that doesn't really add much fun to the game if you've killed a Primarch.
Yeah. I think there are both good ways and bad ways of doing it, right? You can say that, all right, the rest of the squad dogpiles the enemy Primarch and like someone else drags him away like the Lion and Curses fight on Selkirk.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. That can work. But when it's like a one-on-one duel, there's no other models around them on the tabletop. It's like, well, it's a lot harder to explain this one.
Yeah.
Because look what happened to Ferris when he tried it. So.
One of the things that makes me laugh is like, that because you do one thing that no one's really only like you're like the only person who brings this up is that they're doing late, end stage heresy, but they have Ferris Manus. And if you read the lore, Demon Mortarion is in the heresy longer than Ferris Manus. And if you do an end stage, and they keep telling you like it's a narrative game, you're like, well, why is Ferris Manus in it so much?
I'm more concerned about it being end stage because they keep like this is Beta Garmin, the latest book. Beta Garmin, this is the battle that occurs right before Terra, Siege of Terra. This is the loyalists just trying to trade bodies for time as the traders are advancing on Terra. So this is the year before the siege, essentially.
Yeah.
Siege of Cathonia apparently is happening at the same time as the Siege of Terra. As Sahadon leaves the Siege of Terra to go to Cathonia and retake it. And yet what are we getting on the tabletop? We're getting miniatures that look like they could have come straight out of the Great Crusade.
See, that would have been my biggest critique of the book. Would have been, this is end stage. This is Siege of Terror. Death Guard are now all Plague Marines. The Emperor's Children are all Norris Marines. Carton is all, and Worldiers are all Khorne Berserkers now. But they should be having rules for those now if you're going to be that end stage of the story. But when sorry, continue.
Yeah, no. Sorry, I've butted in on you. You go.
So, I know Games Workshop at the moment are trying desperately to keep their games separate. But if you're going to try and stay consistent with the story that you've written, you would have started putting these extra rules in for this book. That would have been my argument.
It's bizarre. So, like, Shattered Legions is a great example. Why would you pick Beta Garment for Shattered Legions, which, historically are known for that sort of middle period of the heresy, well away from the Siege of Terror? This is, all survivors of Isfahan is really what the Shattered Legions are known for. And they're present during the campaigns to stop Horus from getting his godlike powers. That's where sort of Shadrach really shines, and he dies like 6 or 7 years into the heresy. It's 13-year-long conflict. Hibao Khan is fighting at that same point in time because he's working with Bion Henrikos. I think it was one of the lieutenants of Medusan. And this is all back when Horus is on the warpath, just crushing his way through the Imperium towards the objective of getting his superpowers.
Mm-hmm.
So why are you sitting a book in year 12 and putting them in that book? Like, it's like they want to have the cake and eat it too. They want to be set in the Siege of Terror because they want to tie it into their awful novel series, personal opinion. And yet they want to have all of the characters and the units of the Middle Heresy, and they want to stay away from the Chaos Space Marine stuff. But which is it? What approach are they trying to take here? It's like there are different design teams. Like the people who are making the models have their idea. The people who are writing the rules have their idea, and the people who are doing the marketing have their idea, and the three shall cross paths.
Yeah. See, like I've been trying to read the Siege of Terror books. I'm going to talk about that in a minute. And I was thinking, like, if I was to do word bearers, at the point of Beta Garment, I would have bought this Chaos Space Marine Combat Patrol box because it fits so well for word bearers at that time. It does. You have the Apostle, you have the Hellbrute, you have them starting to be spiky. It fits word bearers for that time. I would.
Yeah, well, this is the thing. When do people want to set these things? Because that from Beta Garment, to Terror is like the Death Guard. They're getting smelly. They're getting very smelly.
Yeah.
The current plastics don't really do the smelliness justice.
No.
So you're left at an impasse there, aren't you? And you don't necessarily want to use the full 40k kits either, because the 40k kits are, there's a lot of time for that corruption to fully set in as well.
Yeah.
Where things have been taken to extremes, where the Death Guard, for some reason, have the Great Barrier Reef growing out of every model. It's not just a plague at this point. They've turned into full-on shipwrecks, I guess. But so you can't fully use the 40k miniatures, but you also can't fully use the 30k miniatures. You need sort of an amalgam of the two. It's a sort of converter's paradise to be had there. Get your conversions, your green stuff, your 3D printed parts, your third-party parts, and go to town on the miniatures. Great. But they don't show us that. And in fact, they're so lazy when it comes to doing that. Take Asahadon, the character in the Siege of Cathonia, the Sons of Horus character. He's apparently the last of a group of Sons of Horus who shun chaos, and they don't actively partake in the chaos activities. Therefore, they're not mutated or chaosified. And that's their excuse as to why this guy who's literally been hanging around with Horus, who's bleeding off warp energy, whose ship is so evil that when Custodes were transported on board, half of them went insane. For some reason, he is untouched and unblemished by this, and therefore him and all his company that went to the Siege of Cathonia are in just this pristine Mark 6 power armor. There's no Chaos Stars on it. There's no anything. There's no spikes, no trophy racks, no flayed human skins hanging off their vehicles. They literally look like they've just come from the Triumph of Ornor.
See, this is the sort of thing I'm talking about. It's just this. We've sort of put it in this weird spot because I got a feeling they're going to be expanding the Horus Heresy into the Scouring, so people can go, well, I don't want to do Imperial Fist. Like, I don't like Imperial Fist. I like the Crimson Fist. I like Alexis Pollux, which is actually why I've started an Imperial Fist army, because I want to do the Scouring to the Crimson Fist. And it hurts me so much to do that. It does. But they kind of want, it looks like they're going to go into the Scouring so they can go in to go, oh, look, now you can paint your Space Marines all these other colors now. You know?
I mean, that would make perfect sense from a marketing standpoint. The question I have is, though, at what point now are you starting to double dip again on your systems? Because they're afraid to double dip on themselves.
Oh, yeah.
Take the new Lehman Russ for the Solar Auxiliary range. You've created a competitor to your existing Lehman Russ for your Cadian range that they clearly don't want to update because they didn't. And they've left it in production, so they're not getting rid of it to replace it with that horrible Rogal Dawn tank. So they don't want it to compete, though. So what do? They made it the same price, basically. It's like, hang on, but it doesn't have any sponsored weapons included with it. Like, why are you picking that price point? It doesn't make sense. Like, do you not want to just sell as many of this kit to as many people to recoup the cost of making in the first place? Well, no, because you think like that 40K market is really who a lot of these heresy releases are sort of appealing to.
Yeah.
And then they got, early in Heresy 2.0, they had the Plastic Contemptors, Plastic Leviathan, Spartan, and they removed them all from the legacies so that they can't be used by 40K players, because what was happening was they would go, oh, I'll take a Leviathan. I don't want to take a Redempted Dreadnought. And the company went, whoa. We want you to buy both. That's the story here. So they just removed it from having rules in 40K.
What made me laugh about these new models is, like, I was looking at the new Medusa, and I want to get the new Solar Auxiliary Lehman Russ just to see if it remains true. But they showed the inside of the new Medusa. Where the hatchet, where the hatches would be to the sponson?
Yes.
There's no door on the inside. I was just looking at it, I was like, someone literally had to look at it and go, there's a hatch on the outside, that's where the sponson would go. Oh, wait, then let's just not put a door on the inside, like no one will notice.
Well, I guess those two little side hatches on the outside, they're not to get access in and out of the vehicle. They're just to get some sort of maintenance access inside the tracks.
Yeah.
That's how we look at that. The question is, when you get the sponsons on there, what happens? I guess no one's ever meant to see inside these vehicles the same way they were never meant to notice that there was no floor in the bottom of the Rogal Dawn tank.
Yeah, it's like, you've been playing for a long time. Like, you remember 3rd edition and those old rhinos and the old tanks where it was like you had all the nice designs on the outside, and in the inside it was just like blank because no one was meant to see on the inside.
Yeah. Yep. Because everything was glued up solid on those things.
It's like, I was talking to my friend because I painted the devilfish for the towel, and he said, "Oh, you've done a good job on the inside." I said, "Yeah," because no one's going to see that. I went, "No, because I'm going to glue it shut."
What's funny is those old like rhinos back in the 3rd edition days, they didn't even have a ramp at the back of them. They just had the other driver's hatch upside down at the back.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, I remember. But we were fine with it back in those days because that was the early days of Games Workshop's plastic kits, and people tolerated it because that was the technology of the era.
Like, do you remember the old Lehman Russes where you had to glue all the wheels on the track and everything?
Now I have one of those still in my bits box, damaged. I left it in the car on too hot a day. Australia's days were hot enough; they actually melted the miniature.
Oh, bloody hell.
Yeah, I had one though, and I did like that though because it had all those really good track guards on it. That version, the same one that also had all the white metal parts. If you wanted to make the Demolisher variant of the Russ, you had that big heavy white metal turret you had to buy. Went on the plastic hull. Ugh.
Talking about metal, did you read the did you read the last Old World Almanac about the goblins and orcs?
Yes.
Did you read the bit where they said they had to teach the heavy metal team how to pin?
That does not surprise me.
I read that. I was like, how could you, like, these guys are meant to be the experts at the hobby, the top class. Like, how do you go so far through the hobby and not know how to pin, especially in a company that still sells metal models?
Well, questions about the company's performance in the and who they're hiring, I think can be best boiled down to what they pay. They don't seem to be particularly generous with their pay packet, and therefore they don't retain highly skilled people. Instead, I'm not saying this, by the way, to demean or diminish the contributions of those who work there, but rather many people see Games Workshop as the stepping stone now in their career when it comes to game development and sculpting and things like that, as opposed to the end destination that they once were seen as. So you get an example like Duncan Rhodes.
Yeah.
And way back in the day, he was just painting stuff that got featured in White Dwarf. Then ends up working for them. Then he ends up becoming sort of the iconic face of their tutorials. And then he used this newfound fame to launch a brand based around himself that never would have got off the ground if he didn't have that pre-established fame from Games Workshop. And of course, fans who are spoiled for choice of content creators. I'm not saying this to disparage him either, but fans were spoiled for potential content creators on the internet that give it out for free already, and to a much higher level than he paints. And again, not to put the man down, but that's the nature of things. There are a lot of people, crystal brush, really high-end paint competition winners who just do free tutorials online and in bulk, and they have a huge back catalogue. And yet people gravitate towards Duncan because maybe he's really likable, but also because of the fact that he was associated with Games Workshop, they saw that as a mark of quality. And perceived quality, not necessarily real quality, because, again, he's in that sort of mid-ground of painters where very competent person, but you wouldn't back him to win the Slayer sword. And it's just a funny thing, though, because this is what many of these Games Workshop staff are like. They're hiring people in the company who can perform the job to an acceptable standard, not the highest standard, because that's all they'll pay for. And people seem to move on pretty quickly from all departments there, except for a sort of few old hands. And they've lost most of the old hands that wrote everything in the first place. The only people who linger around like a bad fart are the management.
Yeah, because I'm seeing a lot of these, like the Perry twins have gone on to their own company now. They do historic wargaming, and they've got a good selection. And you got people going to Mantic, like Alessio Calvatore is writing rules for Warpath. We can see that people are moving on. Like I said earlier about how Games Workshop seems to be this company where they're making the mistakes so other companies can learn, and people are just going to be moving on from them, sort of thing. And I think you're right on that.
Yeah, and you've got, I think was it Andy Chambers, might have been, who did Drop Zone, Drop Fleet Commander. I think it was Andy Chambers. But then he volunteered to come back to help them work on Old World. Said, look, I'll come in basically as a consultant. I wrote like the last session of Warhammer Fantasy. I can tell you everything you need to know about Warhammer Fantasy and the balance, blah, blah, blah. And he went to them. They didn't ask him. He went to them, and they didn't even respond to him.
See, but to me, if I was in that sort of position and like someone who had in-depth knowledge and experience and said, look, I'm willing to come in and help you, you'd snatch up that sort of idea, wouldn't you? You're like,
if you're not full of hubris.
And No, I agree. I do think that you're right because it does seem to be a lot of, hubris. You're right. Within Games Workshop, but because they are the tippy top, but they can't. They feel like they're too big to fail, sort of thing. But we
have rewarded their ineptitude with success for far too long as a community.
Was it the phrase I've heard now lately is failing upwards?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of that. Also a big fan of the phrase the self-licking lollipop.
Yeah. I just got to learn how to fail upwards so I can be successful.
Yeah, it makes you wonder how people do it, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, we know the answer: money, nepotism, and right place, right time. It's those are the criteria.
This is like the Siege of Terror books. I've been trying to read them, and I find a lot of them to be an absolute slog, and I think it started a solo war, and I'm no fan of Rogal Dawn. He's probably my least favorite Primarch. And right at the start of Solar War, he has his best captain right on the front line, and you're just thinking, what sort of captain? What is your best guy? Why would you do that? And then I was watching one of your videos on the Siege of Terror books, and they said, and there was a comment on that, and it's kind of struck me kind of weird because, Mac has not read the last book, and yet he criticizes all of them. It's like he's obviously read all the rest, so I think you have a good idea of how it goes. And with the Solar War starting pretty much page 1 so badly, kind of struck me as how do you end a classical story like the Horus Heresy that badly from the start?
It's because these authors exist in an echo chamber. Realistically, they're getting feedback from each other, right? And none of them want to, I don't think, be too hard on their friends because they're all friends.
Yeah.
So, you get your Cabal storylines, you get your Erda storylines. I don't know if you've read Erda yet.
Yeah, I have. It's like the only reason Erebus is not that bad because he killed Erda.
Yeah, redeemed Erebus, I guess. Thank you, Chris Wright, for fixing one more thing. But these are decisions that wouldn't have been come up with logically if this is not one story being helmed by one author who had a vision and saw it through to the end. This is a group of people who've all got their own take on this universe, and because they've got their own takes on the universe and they inject their own version of events into everything, you're going to end up with exactly what we've got, which is a schizophrenic storyline where characters, because they're being written by different people, are changing personality rapidly from story to story to story. And Perturabo, of course, is the worst offender across the entire Horus Heresy novel series, where 1 minute he's Dick Dastardly, the mustache-twirling villain. The next he's like this highly thoughtful, contemplative character, pondering the mysteries of life. And it's various authors have had to take shots at trying to tie these disparate personalities together, from his John Frenchification of that just dumb mustache-twirling villain. That's the worst kind, and which is something a Primarch should never be. A Primarch should always be the most lethal person in the room.
I was actually sorry, I interrupted you.
No, go for it.
No, I was actually going to bring up Perturabo myself. Have you read the Guy Haley book, the Primarch book?
Yes, one of the best, actually.
It is, and Guy Haley did such a great job at writing Perturabo. 1, he got me into Iron Warriors, and 2, he got me to absolutely hate Perturabo as a character. Not like he wrote him as this very callous, very good leader. Like he would throw away. It's like, why would you throw away so many people? We got the win. It was advantageous to us to do this. I can replace people, And he was this very smart guy. And like you said, John French just turns him into Dick Dastardly, or like one of the people like the old westerns where they tie up a lady on the railroad track, that sort of thing.
Yeah, and it's to me that's because when someone does that, they're generally not a good writer. I'm not saying I could do better, saying it's not good writing, because instead of making the villain naturally come to life and be an amazing villain, they're just taking the lazy, cheap shortcut to show us that a person is evil. So look, they're doing evil things. They're killing their own henchmen. You know, it's the old James Bond trope. He kills the henchman. Now you know he's the bad guy. Yeah, or you could make a more complex villain with a lot of depth and motivation. So I understand where they're coming from and can sympathize with them to some degree, even if I don't agree with their motivations. No, okay, so be it. And
No.
yeah, it's a cancer. It's a cancer.
It really is. It's like the thing I see with Games Workshop at the moment and Chaos, they don't know what to do with them. Because one of my biggest gripes at the moment, and I don't hate Primaris Marines, right? Every single chapter can have one except the Crimson Fist. I think the Crimson Fist shouldn't have them. And I think the Crimson Fist should have been killed. I'm a big Crimson Fist fan. They're one of my favorite chapters. But to me, the reason why it made them so good is because they got so decimated on Windsworld, but they were basically they were no longer using Imperial Fist tactics. And Games Workshop are like, these are the good guys. We can't have them lose at all. And Chaos are like, well, what can we do with Chaos if they can't win? You know?
Well, okay, so I'll give you this question. I've already sort of spoken about it before on my channel, but why are the Demon Primarchs coming back? What is their purpose in the story?
Oh, exactly.
Because to me, the whole reason that the Primarchs are coming back, beyond just selling copious amounts of plastic, is they have returned the Demon Primarchs because they are the new avatar of Cain. In old Warhammer 40,000, it was a joke that whenever you need to show a character was powerful, you had them kill the avatar of Cain. So Marnius Kelgar did it, Fulgrim did it, Gilliman did it. Everyone has killed an avatar of Cain at some point. Just so show how strong they are.
Yeah.
And now it's a Demon Primarch because they're immortal. So you can kill them as many times as you want. And so that's what they do. Gilliman's taken out Magnus. He's, I think, taken out Mortarion, possibly. Angron was taken down by the Lion 5 minutes after he himself returned. And yes, okay, I understand now that the Lion and Gilliman are just better than the competition, which kind of is a shame for the competition because now they are toothless tigers. There is no threat there. They fall into that trap that, the Star Wars viewers, the Kylo Ren.
Oh, yeah.
He's met his Rey Palpatine. She's kicked his ass in the first movie. So what's the threat going into the second and third movie? Well, there isn't one. The character is not a threat. He's been beaten before. And pretty resoundingly beaten at that. So now the Demon Primarchs, they've lost the charm of being Demon Primarchs because you're just losers.
Oh yeah,
and you lost the Siege of Terror, you lost the Horus Heresy, you lost the Scouring, and you lost this. And Abaddon with his Blackstone fortresses that can destroy whole solar systems, all he could do with it was just crash one into Cadia to destroy it. So it's like you tell me I can just sacrifice one planet in the Imperium out of the millions of planets that the Imperium has. I can sacrifice one to destroy Blackstone Fortress. Done deal. That's a great trade-off. Any day.
The funniest thing about Abaddon, right? The funniest thing is that a common mistake I've seen is that they say he's led 13 Black Crusades. What the people I've seen a lot is that what they don't realize is that there's been 13 Black Crusades, but they've not all been Abaddon. 2 successful ones, and they were successful. One was led by Fabius Bile, the other was led by Khan the Betrayer.
I guess Abaddon put guys at their disposal, therefore it technically counts as his win. I don't know how it works, but it's they've achieved nothing. People, this is one of my big criticisms when 8th edition dropped. And I wore it then. I had to take it on the chin because I had a lot of negative reception to my opinions on 8th edition when it dropped. Because so many people were just so hyped up. People this community is the fucking worst for letting their emotions get in the way of their brain.
Oh yeah.
And what happens is you bring up a logical point and they just shoot it down because they want that dopamine hit. They want the happiness. That's all. They can't not have the instant gratification, you know, instead of saying, all right, it's got issues, but I choose to like it anyway. That's really what the actual mature solution is.
Oh yeah.
You know, recognizing the issues are real, but that you're okay with them. That is very different to the issues are real, but I'm going to downplay them, which is how the community copes. And with 8th edition, I said, like, you know, it doesn't matter that Abaddon has destroyed Cadia because nothing in the galaxy has changed. Because, well, what's changed? The Cicatrix Maledicta means demons can be summoned on any planet now. They could anyway. That was their background. That's what made the demons a threat was, you know, one day your planet's normal, the next there's a purple cloud above your planet in space, and bloodthirsters start coming out of the fountains. Yeah. That sucks. So that didn't have an impact. Oh, the Necrons are waking up. So what? The Necrons were waking up. You know, the Tower expand their empire. Yes, they've been doing that for multiple editions now. You know, we're just in the same place. We just have more models.
Yeah.
And so narratively, we have not improved at all as a game. And when we do have perfect setups for something, like Vashtor is running around on the Dark Angels Fortress Monastery, the Rock. He's running around on there, opening up rooms, getting into stuff and getting mischievous. And it's like, what I expected was he opens the wrong door and then like that Undertaker meme in wrestling, you know, the lion like steps up behind him, you know. It's like perfect. That's a perfect setup to bring back the lion. And that's not what they did. So they had a big bad character there who is strong, who would have been a perfectly good guy to go up against someone like the lion. And they didn't use him. Instead, the lion just wakes up on some forest world unrelated to those events. And it turns out he has the ability now to just teleport from forest to forest to forest on different planets. And also he gets old. And as you would know from the Perturabo novel, what happened when Perturabo walked into her Rudd time field?
Oh, yeah.
Nothing. Didn't age.
I know.
Horus went into time dilation in the warp. And they're like, he's older. I can see it in his face, but he doesn't look older. He just looks more weathered, was what the Marine said. The Emperor himself is 30,000 years old now. You know, we've seen this across all of these different examples. And we know the lion is the template, is the least deviated from the Emperor, but he's now Charles Dance. So, because Charles Dance is cool. And it's just... They will shit on their IP and weaken it. They will weaken their IP. They're not even at the stage of making TV shows yet, and they've already watered it down. And I just think that is terrible from a health standpoint because people love continuity.
Oh yeah.
You don't want your Game of Thrones. Why is this happening? Why is this happening? And the audience asking questions and getting sidetracked from the storyline of your show because they're now asking questions about things that don't make sense. That's not what you want. And yet the hobby is already going there because Games Workshop is trading that long-term sustainability for short-term profit.
Oh, definitely. Because if you look at the comic book industry at the moment, it's absolute trash. And it's being stomped to the ground by anime and manga from Japan. And everyone I speak to who's into manga in Japan, they say the biggest reason why it's so good is because you can read like issue 1 of One Piece and you'll have the same Luffy as in issue 150. It's completely consistent throughout. And they don't, and one of my biggest problems with Games Workshop and Black Library is they've got so many writers, they don't really stick the writers to the one thing. They keep moving them around. So you lose consistency because two writers are going to have two different opinions.
Oh, can I add a caveat to that? Because you're 100% right. I think you're 100% right. But with one caveat, they do stick some authors on a project. The problem is it's Nick Kime getting the Salamanders and it's Gav Thorpe getting the Dark Angels, and neither of them can write them.
I'll tell you what, I'm a Dark Angel fan, so I read all the Gav Thorpe books, and I read the Azrael book, and you shouldn't read a book about Azrael, the Grandmaster of the Dark Angels, and just piss yourself laughing throughout the book, because it just ends up being slapstick comedy. In one chapter, he falls on his ass like 3 times. It's like, this is Azrael, the Grandmaster of the Dark Angels. Why is he falling on his ass? You know?
I don't know anyone who has read any of the Salamanders books in the Horus Heresy and liked them. Nick Kime has fundamentally ruined Salamanders, and Gavthorpe fundamentally ruined the Dark Angels in the Horus Heresy, because he was given the chance to explore this really interesting legion, and instead he spent a book talking about the origins of the Order Knights on Caliban.
Yeah.
It's a Dark Angels book without Dark Angels in it. And it's like, that's the sort of thing you save as a side plot, a B plot story for, like, you've done the novel series and you want to go back and get a few more hits out of the Cash Pinata. That's when you do those stories. You don't do those as the introduction to the series. Imagine if, I'll use Game of Thrones again as an example. Imagine if Game of Thrones, though, as a show, started 3 years earlier than what it did, and it's just like a day in the life. It's just daily episodes of the kids doing schoolwork with the Maester, and there is no political intrigue, there's no war, there's no conflict, there's no fighting. It's just the kids doing chores around the castle. You'd go, man, this show kind of sucks, doesn't it?
You got Lord of the Rings, but it's about Samwise Gamgee just doing his gardening.
Yeah, it's just like the ABC gardening channel. So here we are in the garden. Oh, look at this. It's a happy little grasshopper over here. Now, today we're going to be working with the lavenders. It probably has an audience somewhere that it appeals to. Grandma would probably be interested in that. But it's funny to me that they give these IPs to these authors, and it's like the company just wipes their hands and it goes, just return to us in a year with 300 pages, thanks.
No word of a lie.
Continuity, don't worry about it.
No word of a lie. Years and years ago, I was going to start a Salamander army. So I bought the first of Nick Kime Salamander books, not the Horus Heresy ones, the normal ones. I literally got halfway through that book and I thought, fuck it, I'm not doing Salamanders anymore. This is just so boring.
I want to sell my Salamanders army for 30k because I'm just not enjoying it, playing it this edition. For my personal taste, and I'm asking a pretty fair price. I'm asking 2.5 Australian for this army, right? It's like three Land Raiders, a Spartan. These are all legit plastics. A Venator, which has been upgraded to the Sigma Venator, is all heavy flamer for its Pintle sponsored weapons, which is a sick loadout. I've got Fire Drakes and Terminators and 30 Pyroclasts, the whole Age of Darkness, Tacticals and Dreadnoughts, and all that's in there. And yet, do you think anyone wants it even at $2,500?
I know, right?
Which is, we're talking like 1,000, maybe 1,200 pounds here for this army. And people are like, oh, Salamander's lore is just awful this edition, or oh, their gameplay is just awful this edition. It was some combination of the two. So I'm like, wow, Games Workshop managed to so comprehensively do the Salamanders in that people won't touch them.
I tell you what, we have it what reminds me, you remember you did your video about the Terminators and the veterans a while ago. I was going to cuss you out on that video because I had just finished converting my tactical squad all into veterans, and I was like, "What? You shouldn't take veterans!" Like, you bastard.
Well, I hate giving the gameplay Tactica because I don't want to become like a 40k channel where it's like, well, this is the meta. Must take this or you're doing it wrong. But I try and say to people, because it's like, well, you're going to spend your hard-earned money. So if you're going to spend your money and you don't have a lot of it to spend, this is going to be the most bang for your buck.
Oh, yeah.
Focus on these kits. And it's a hard sort of line to straddle where it's like, I don't want you to just pick the best stuff. I'm going to give you stuff that's not the best, but is at least viable.
It didn't cost me any extra I just had all the spare bits of the Death Watch boxes. like with swords and stuff. So I was just converting them. But no, I get your point because Warhammer tabletop gaming isn't a cheap hobby. It's also not, it's also expensive on time as well because you've got so much to do with it. And the thing I see when people talk about the meta, because honestly, that's something that annoys me, and I know you don't, because you always like to. And one thing I do like I said about your channel is that you try to give a fair view on what the units can do. So I don't end up spending. Someone doesn't spend like £500 on a Titan, and only for it to be taken off the table almost straight away, because you're going to feel bad about that, aren't you?
Yes, that's the key. Is I don't want people to. Well, one, I don't want to waste their money, and two, I don't want them to feel bad because we've all done it. We've all bought a character, bought a squad of some kind. If you played Warhammer for long enough, it's happened to you. You've invested time and money, and you're really, really proud of your accomplishment. And then you put it down at first game, it just gets absolutely stomped in front of you. And it's like you just got a brand new car and you straight away hit a telephone pole. it's just the miserable experience had by all. It's like, oh, this is the awesome character I converted up, and then someone just like snipes him out of the squad with a lucky shot. It's like, well, shit. I think we've all been through it.
Oh, I'll never forget having I bought a brand new Avatar Kane back in 8th edition, and they managed to just screw his rules up so badly. He was literally not much better than a Space Marine captain. Like, this dude's a greater demon. Like, he's meant to be hard as nails. And I just put him on the table, and turn one, he was dead. I was like, that hurts. That hurts so bad.
What's that one from the Hobbit film? Why does it hurt so much? Because it was real.
Yeah. But yeah, like, this is the thing I've been finding. Like, what's your view on spoilers of books?
I used to care a lot about the heresy novels getting spoilers, but after like 60 books and just a huge down spiral in the quality, I just said stuff spoil away.
See, my opinion on spoilers has always been, it's not about the destination, it's about the journey. So someone can say, this happens in this book, and people go, oh, spoilers. Like, okay, I want to read that book now because I want to know how it gets to that point. And I got Praetorian of Dawn. I wish I hadn't. I've never felt like I've wasted so much money on a book before after reading Praetorian of Dawn. And I was really, you gotta read it because of Alfarius dies in it. And I was reading it like, it's not worth it at this point. I'm just looking at Alfarius and says, can you just quickly get it over with so I can close the fucking book?
I'm finding it more hilarious, the Stockholm syndrome of the Siege of Terror collectors. The amount of people who are like, this series is awful, I'm getting the next book. Jesus. What are you doing to yourself? Like, queuing up for their pre-orders and then going, oh, well, I've got the other books in the collection. I guess I'll go pay a scalper $300 to get it. It's like, oh... it's like the abused wife coming back home to the abuser. Don't do it to yourself.
Like I said, I'm trying to get through it. I'm halfway through Mortis, and when I first saw about the scalpers, my first thought was like, just let them fucking have them. It's not waste. Just don't bother. Just let them have it. Let them keep those books.
Yeah. I mean, it would really be funny if nobody bought all those copies of the scalpers and they were just left with like the crushing debt of having bought 100 limited edition copies of Siege of Terror.
Did you ever hear what Nintendo done to scalpers? This is one of my funniest stories I've ever heard in my life against scalpers. Did you hear what they did?
I did, but share away anyway, because there'll probably be people watching who've never heard about some of the hilarious stuff that Nintendo did.
Basically, when the Super Nintendo Classic came out, they said it was limited numbers, and they did all that, and pre-orders, they went straight away. 2 days before it was meant to be released properly, they went, oh, by the way, we've got this many back still. And they had been running them all the time and not told anyone. So all the scalpers were like, wait, what? So they had to quickly get rid of all their stock that they couldn't get rid of because Nintendo just stocked up completely.
Yep, pulled the rug out from under them. One of many great moves by Nintendo, that one. Versus Games Workshop, where right now there is no stock, so it doesn't matter if you know, I could probably scalp a Boxosaurus Warriors at this point. There is that little stock on the website.
God, I cursed Games Workshop. I ordered the Vindicator with Alexis Pollux. And I was waiting for, you wait for your time to come. You wait for it to say, oh, we've sent it away. I get an email. 3 weeks later, it's out of stock. It's like, I ordered it 3 fucking weeks ago,
I'm not sure what's happening with their stock in the background. I did a video just a couple of days ago talking about it. Just based on my own experience in the industry. And just saying, like, here's what I think are some of the issues affecting them. I had a couple different people reach out to me. Some said yes, some said not quite. So,
I know they're upgrading their warehouses and stuff. And like I've worked on factory lines. I've done production management as myself, and I know because I've done warehousing. And when a new warehouse was being built, there was always they always prioritized stuff like this stuff needs to be moved straight away. We need to keep this here because this is like our big seller, And
yes.
if any new product came out, that was like, we'll get a new product, we'll get it in the old warehouse while we're building the new one, sort of thing.
Correct.
And so when I see, like, I ended up getting the Imperial Fist Command Squad because I do like the Castellan. No, not the guy, not the guy with the banner, the other one.
The champion looking.
Yeah. And so it's just quite shocking when if I go to a different company and I go, I want this and this, I don't have to end up waiting 3 weeks to be told it's out of stock. It's like, why didn't you tell me when I ordered it, but it was out of stock?
I have a different approach, even though I'm not the biggest channel in the world. I'm only 27,000 subs, something like that. I read through the comments every day. I make sure to reply to at least some comments on every video because I want people to know that they've been seen and that I actually give a crap about what they have to say. Which is ironic because I show this level of care and compassion towards my community. The company will not, and yet the company gets defenders coming from everywhere and I get bloody haters. But I sit there and I go through the comments and I read them, and some interesting ones here. People saying, I ordered, they took my money. Until I called them, though, they never told me that the product was out of stock. So they were never going to give me a refund or get in touch with me potentially. It was only because I spoke to them. And then other people saying, and then 3 weeks later, it still says it's in stock on their website, but I know it's out of stock because I've called them and they've told me, no, we don't have that and we can't ship it. So the stock management on their new website is just abysmal. They don't know what's going in, what's going out. They obviously have very poor tracking systems. They might be upgrading that in the new warehouse and doing a very high-tech model where everything's QR coded and what have you. But right now, whatever they're doing is not working. And yet people are not really talking enough about the issue, So I thought I threw a... I'm going to say not talking enough about it. I mean, people have brought up the fact that there are stock issues, but nobody's talking about the why. I'm the only one who's talking about the why.
See, one of the weirdest things I've seen, and I think Games Workshop's the only company that produces their own thing that doesn't do this, is they don't link their online shop to their stock levels. It's like there's someone in the middle that I think quickly runs to the website, go, quick, we've only got 5 of these left, sort of thing.
Yeah, it's like they're manually updating everything. It's wow, it is not what you do at a company that size. Like we, at $17 million a year, my company was avoiding that mistake, that pitfall. We already had barcodes and stock tracking that automatically updated the system. You just went around with a scan gun and just shot it at the fucking barcodes. And that was at 17 million a year turnover in revenue. Then when I was working at a company where we were doing 130 odd million a year in turnover, that was even more strict with the stock control. Like it got better. But then somehow Games Workshop, at the over $1 billion a year in turnover, it's worse than that little 17 million company was.
Yeah. It astounds me because they are a big company and they still have this mindset kind of best backwards back to the 90s when like it was done by hand. I did factory work in the early 2000s and everything was pretty much done by hand then. You know, it's 23 years later where most of these other companies have moved on. It's like, this is what's in our warehouse, this is what we know, and this is what's on the production line or what's to be produced that day. So they had an idea a couple of days in advance of what's to come. And the other one that I think is that, and I've got to say, Games Workshop have actually started to learn from this, is that the pre-orders are now 2 weeks, not a week away.
When I did production management, I would do my scheduling, and I'd be scheduling. I was so on the ball as a manager that I was about 2 to 3 months in advance on most of my machines. I had a couple of machines that were sort of my quote unquote emergency machines that were just running stock that I could swap the die out at any time, put a different mold in as per like a crazy request, like, oh, we need these ASAP. Cool. They can go in that machine, right? But I'd have several weeks, at least 8 weeks planned out for each machine on paper, on a chart, up on each machine so the operators could see what was coming up and knew. And it also meant that my materials guys could say, yep, we're going to need to get these colored plastics ready and such, right? Because there's a lot that goes into running a factory, believe it or not. And I was well ahead of the curve in that regard, where it was like all my stuff was in stock and I had a small surplus in everything. And we'd gone from 3-month lead time to same-day dispatch by my time finishing up with that company because of the changes I've made to production. And so I look over at Games Workshop and it's like, what are you doing that has led to this mess? And obviously SKU creep is one of the issues. Like SKU creep is just monumental there right now because they just, to keep the wheels on their finances, they have to produce. They have to produce new kits. They are addicted to the FOMO hype spending model, which is not a good addiction to have because it's not sustainable.
Oh, no, definitely not.
You know, they just want to release constant box games. Every 3 months, you're getting a box game. It's that simple. Because they need to keep that revenue just coming in. They need it. They need it badly. And because of that, they're constantly adding new products to the product line. But they're not adding proportionate number of machines. So it's like if you've grown your products by 200%, but you grew machines by 10%, how do you expect to keep up production? You can't. And on top of that, you've got all the warehousing. Well, again, you've grown your products by 200%. Have you added proportional percentage of warehousing? No. They wait till they hit crisis levels before they looked at these things. And it's just, that is not what $1 billion company does. But this is to be expected because they are not run by professionals in manufacturing. They're run by professionals in sales.
I wouldn't even
this
say that.
Is the problem.
I think one of the biggest problems is also their sales technique because it's always this. It always feels like it's always a constant hard sell on you. Like if you read any article, it's always like how great this thing is, or just we've talking to the designer of this model and I say just how great it is and everything else. Oh, you'll see the new epic models come out and it's always how good it is. And it always feels like a constant hard sell. And of course, you get the big boxes, like that new Solo Auxilia box coming out. And at this point, if I saw that Solo Auxilia box, I'm not going to get it because it's limited edition only. It's a time. It's going to be once it's gone, it's gone. And as you said, FOMO is a bad addiction for any company because it actually ends up annoying your customer base more than anything else.
Well, so take those 2 new Chaos Marine Lord releases. Yeah. I put up a meme talking about it, and people shouldn't read too much into memes because they are just that, they're memes. But they do have a grain of truth to them. And it's two new characters, but they're each put into their own new box. And you only need one of those boxes realistically. You probably don't need both boxes. So it's it's a pretty scummy move. They could have released them as individual characters. They chose not to. They chose to paywall them inside boxes of old miniatures.
Yeah.
And yet people defend it. They say, well, treat it as those miniatures are coming out in 6 months' time on their own. Well, one, even if that is true, which historically it's all over the place when those characters will. We saw that. Yeah, we saw it for the longest time with many different characters. I mean, can you buy the what's that demon engine? Looks like a spider. Can you even buy that on its own at the moment?
Nope. No, with Chaos, you can't. Chaos, for some reason, Chaos characters, they decide never to release them on their own. We still haven't have a Lord of Contagion released. We're still waiting on the Possessor to be released. It's like with Chaos, they just go, yeah, we're just not going to do it. It annoys the hell out of me.
So people, some people say, well, they come out on their own later, and so other people are now in the comments. Again, I read through the comments, and they said, well, just treat it as a 6 months time. This is coming out release instead. So in 6 months, I'll buy the miniature when it's separate from this box. So Games Workshop is now training this mentality into their customers, and they're also. Because I did some pretty controversial takes on the old world being dead, which I think every day I'm being proven more and more correct. But they've trained their customers. If you do not get instant support today, your system is dead. They've trained that into the customers through their actions. Mm-hmm. So these are the consequences of the moves they've made in maximizing their current revenue at the expense of their long-term revenue.
Oh yeah. And no, because I'm actually going to be talking about those boxes myself when they drop, because I want to do a complete price breakdown. And think about it, right? How can we destroy? They bring out these characters, these great characters for Chaos, and it's just like as soon as we just end up ignoring they ever existed. We don't have a Lord of Contagion still. I mean, that's from Dark Imperium, from that 7th edition. And we still haven't got him.
And they don't revisit many of these characters in the storylines either. They're a pump and dump. When was the last time Worldclaimer did anything interesting?
Exactly. He was meant to be Abaddon's right-hand man. Like, he was the one he was the Silver Surfer to Galactus, sort of thing.
What about the Silent King, the Necrons? What's he been up to?
Probably not much. And that's the other thing I've seen a lot. And this is... Do you remember Transformers?
Yes, of course.
And you remember basically the cartoon was just this big marketing ploy to buy more toys?
Yes.
That's what I feel like Games Workshop and Black Library right now. It's like, we'll get this brand new book out. It's basically so you can buy the new models to go with your new book, sort of thing. And I feel like they're copying that, but they're not doing it the right way. Because I mean, how many Aldar books are there out, or how many Necron books or Orc books? Oh, we got Mike books on Orcs at the moment. God,
I think they see the hobby as a whole as a cash cow to keep them afloat until they can transition the IP over to TV and other media.
Oh yeah,
that becomes their cash cow.
Oh, I absolutely agree with you on that one. I've been watching them carefully, and when they released the Power Wash DLC, I was like, someone's got to be snorting some seriously high grade cocaine because they can't afford just. Power Wash had to go to them and say, "Can we use your IP?" A lot of companies will say, "No, your game doesn't. Your game doesn't fit our setting." No, and they say no on that bet, but it's like Power Wash Simulator, $40K. That was just,
yeah. Well, look at some of the games that they've been involved in lately that have nothing to do with 40K. Call of Duty.
I can excuse.
Tanks.
Sorry, I can excuse. I was just going to say I can excuse Call of Duty because it's war game. And they shouldn't, but I would have said they shouldn't have done Space Marines. They should have done Imperial Guard.
Yeah, but they can't do that because one, that would be more appropriate, and two, it doesn't show off their poster children.
Yeah. And
The
you said
Space
water.
Marines.
And you went water tanks. That's the next one. Yeah.
Geez, what else? I know there's been a ton, but those are the ones that immediately jump to mind. They've got all the Joy Toys proliferation there. Where, funny enough, if you're more likely to get a Primark in stock in Joy Toys than you are in the bloody Games Workshop store. They're having a big merchandise bonanza coming up where you can get Warhammer Fantasy, the old world cosplay clothing, and people are like, oh, this is great. You know, there's so many people into cosplay. It's like, dude, you could already buy that stuff. Just go to any medieval fair. It's everywhere, and it's made by regular, everyday people. You know, your money's actually going back into the community, but you'd rather, you know, deal with companies that have literally signed the deal with the devil in Games Workshop. I mean, they make bloody scented candles, for crying out loud. This company will. You remember there was the memes going around back when Force Awakens came out.
Oh yeah,
the Star Wars oranges.
Yeah, I was thinking of in Malcolm from Jurassic Park. You market it, you slap it on a lunchbox. So that whole sketch of that whole bit, like, yeah, that's just Games Workshop at this moment. You got Display, McFarlane Toys.
If there's anyone they can get there, because they're just hoping for it. They're hoping for it to just land somewhere, and then they can just shift their IP over to where it lands. But the problem is, they really needed this to happen probably 20 years ago.
Oh yeah,
like to hit just as like the comic books industry was sort of comic book movies are on the way up, because Games Workshop is their lore, especially the way they've mistreated it the last few years, is closer to an Avengers style movie than it is to a Dune. It's not heady sci-fi. It's pulp, quick consume, pump and dump sci-fi.
Oh yeah, it's moved on, like because what a lot of money people don't realize, back during the early times when they started getting into video games, Games Workshop were very, very hands-on. They even had their own video game studio part of it. If you look at like the old Rights of War game, you'll see Games Workshop Interactive. And it's all like now we realize, hang, if we take off this hands-off approach, we don't have to do anything. You know? It's like John Carpenter. Did you see his interview about Halloween?
Which one? That's a broad stroke you're drawing there. It's been 50 years since it came out.
Yeah, basically, he said, someone asked him, what do you think about all these Halloween sequels? He goes, this is what I think. I only hear about it when someone comes to my door with a check. I'm like, thank you very much.
Yep.
Sort of thing.
Yep. He's great though, John Carpenter, because he's open about the Hollywood industry and
yeah.
You know, the studios and how corrupt it all sort of is, and distanced himself from it. He's just like, yep, whatever, just give me the money and go away. And it's just funny because they do not make the actions of a company that seems like it wants sustainability in long-term miniatures product. It seems like the actions of a company that wants to just quickly get products out there to keep the money coming in, to keep the stocks visually at least high and successful, but nothing screams sustainability.
No, it does feel like if Warhammer was to die, it's going to be at Games Workshop's hands, because they'll just go, well, we're not making this much money for models, we'll just stop doing that now, and we'll just move on to the novels and the IP, and that'll be our thing. That's how I think Warhammer will die, in my opinion. It will just be bad. We'll just keep doing the books because book production's not that expensive, and we can keep the IP alive and in our hands, and and everyone wants to license it. We'll sell it out to them, rent it out to them.
Yeah.
I don't think it's a good way to go, to be honest with you. But so there are so many games now available for a tabletop, and BattleTech is now third. Did you know BattleTech's now third place in the world sales?
That does not shock me. there's been a huge resurgence in about the last 5 or 6 years in BattleTech, and I mean a huge resurgence. And Catalyst Games, which has done a lot of wrong things on the way, I'll add. Don't think my ire is just preserved for Games Workshop, but they have done multiple Kickstarters and launched a lot of new plastics for the game system, new rule books, the works. So it's got the support at just the right time to really please that community. And I think BattleTech is actually probably, if licensing could get sorted out between all the numerous parties, actually in a better place than 40K is to go into the mainstream with a Dune type movie.
Oh yeah, it's with what I can see, because I actually for years didn't even realize it was a tabletop game. I always thought it was a video game, and then someone said, "Do you know this was a tabletop game?" I was like, "Wait, what?" You know. And I think, yeah, BattleTech definitely has that position where it could, go mainstream, as you said.
It's got lots of novels, a consistent continuity, a huge range of time periods that they can set their events in. It's got all the hallmarks of what you want out of a and it's mature in its content. It doesn't have, what some of the things that let Games Workshop down is their love of these chibi, kiddie-friendly cartoons that they put up on their websites. So I've got you a dark and serious war game, which is all about murder and bloodshed in the 40th millennium, or are you aimed at 8-year-olds? Fucking pick one. BattleTech doesn't have that problem.
Yeah.
BattleTech is towing it's towing the line down a set of books, and because there's a lot of novels that would please people from their 20s through their 50s. It knows the niche it's carving out, and it's stuck very well to that niche.
Yeah, I'm seeing this a lot now. Like, companies seem to be wanting to, I wouldn't say broaden their audience, but appeal to a younger audience, such as Warhammer. Now, I've read the Warhammer Adventure books. I have a little girl, and I want to get her into Warhammer because I don't want her to do drugs. She'll never afford it. And so I read her the Warhammer Adventure books. I'm not to say they're not bad books, and the guy actually did a good job, actually sort of getting the grimdark into such a young age. But when I read some of the more quote-unquote mature books, I'm like, why is this book set for children darker than this book set for adults?
Because they don't police the tone correctly. They don't know what they want to be. They don't. There seem to be strict editorial controls. Like, there were issues with the old Star Wars expanded universe.
Oh yeah.
In that there were a lot of bad stories in there.
Mm-hmm.
But they did have, at least in the early days of the EU, some pretty good editorial controls. And that's why it was successful.
Oh, yeah.
And once they let those slip, that's when it sort of devolved. And that's why people, when Disney bought out its new version of Star Wars, and they said they were ditching the EU, many people went, it is kind of a shit show, okay. Only to be replaced by something arguably worse. But
see, back in the early days, when they started doing the novels straight away, they were very strict. Like, you had the Rogue Squadron series, which is one of my favorite series of sci-fi books, if you ever get a chance to read them. And that was so strict. They had 2 writers on those books. There was like 13 books in all, but they only had 2 writers. And they were always in touch with each other about how the story was going. And then you had things like Timothy Zahn. He'd work on it. Zahn? He would work on his. Yeah, he would work on his books, and it would just be his books, and that's why you had this consistency almost up till when you realized Disney was looking at them, and you're going like, "Yeah, we can see this going bad."
Yeah, Zahn had a really good duology that it sort of tied up the New Republic versus the Empire conflict. Spectre of the Past, Vision of the Future, I think they were called, the two
Oh yeah.
books. And it's like, yeah, right at the end of, the Galactic Civil War, essentially, where it's like the Empire and the New Republic finally come to peace terms, and are in total, like, it's over. The Star Wars is over type thing. It's a really great, duology novels. Like, that dude could write. Same as Kevin J. Anderson had a lot of really good ones in there. I loved I, Jedi. That was one of my favorites.
I like his Champions of the Force
books.
one. I like his Champions of the Force trilogy.
Mm-hmm.
And they did a good job because it fitted so well into the films. Because if you got, like, you had the prequel trilogy, yes, the first one's very political, but it fits the story on how Palpatine got to power. So you wouldn't have a lot of fighting, you wouldn't have a lot of war. It's a lot of, wars don't just start straight away. There's a lot of machinations that go into that. Then you had the original trilogy, which is basically the war itself. And Zahn, Anderson, Stackpole, they all ended up finishing that by showing what happens after the war, where you have to do the cleanup. You have to, put down the enemy who are now the rebels. Like the Empire are now the rebellious force against, they did a good job on that.
Yeah, the duology, the Vision of the Future in that Star Wars, I think it was Shadow of the Past, Vision of the Future, Spectre of the Past, Vision of the Future. Yeah, though that duology was great because it portrayed the Empire and are just tired. They are just tired. They're like, look, we've lost pretty much the entire old Empire. We're down to a few systems. Why are we still going? Why are we trying? Let's just come to terms with the New Republic and be done with it. And it's like, I get it. So I highly encourage people, if you're Star Wars fans, read those two novels, The Spectre of the Past and The Vision of the Future. Plus, you get a Luke Skywalker, middle-aged Luke Skywalker, who's not depressing as hell. So, yeah, take that for what it's worth. You get Mara Jade, all the things you like, all the best aspects of the expanded universe are in those two books.
See, one of my favorite ones I read is, I forgot its name now, it was one by R.A. Salvatore. It was the first of a New Jedi Order. Hold on a second. It's so sad that I can grab a Star Wars book so quickly. It's the first one. I completely got its name. My memory's so bad. I do apologize, but it's the one where did you read the book where Chewie dies?
Yes.
That one.
Yes.
See, that was really good because it showed Han so well. I like the fact, like, when he died like how Chewie should have died. He was killed by a moon.
Yes, saving people on the planet as the moon strikes it. Yeah, spoilers.
For a 20-year-old book, I'm sorry.
Spoilers for a 20-year-old book. Yeah, it was a good book though.
Yeah, and it led so well into the divorce of Han and Leia, and the breakup of their family, because it broke Han. It broke him so much, and it made everything about their relationship, Han and Leia's relationship afterwards, make sense. Whereas, you got the new trilogy, Han and Leia are now divorced. Why?
No, he just had to go back to his smuggling ways. It's that was the whole that was the first book in the Yuzon Vong saga.
Yeah,
which is an all over the shop, love it or hate it type thing. I read the next couple of books in that series, and I just found it hell depressing. Spectre of the Past, Vision of the Future. That's my cutoff. That's the read up to there, and you'll have a pretty good Star Wars experience. And I treat that as what really happened, not the Star Wars sequel trilogy.
I was going through my emo phase, so it really talked to me.
Hey, and again, different people are going to like different things, right?
Oh,
So hopefully we've just given our short review of these books, and people will be able to take away from that what they will, the good and the bad.
yeah.
See,
Oh,
everything comes full circle.
it does. Oh, it's been an hour and a half. I've got to go to bed, dude.
Yeah, I've got to go move a bunch of logs I didn't move yesterday.
Well, I'll tell you what. What I'm going to do is I'm going to record my off thing later when I edit this video, right? Because I'm going to go to
No
bed.
worries.
Yeah. Hopefully we can do this again soon, right?
Yeah, of course.
And well, you have a good day, mate. All right.
Will do.
And
Take care, mate.
you too. Have a good one, dude.
Bye.
Bye.